live studio audience.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Campus Chat. I'm your host, Kennedy Owens, and today we're here with a very special guest.
Hello, I'm Dr. Pamela Dykes. I'm a college professor, an author, and an executive coach.
That's awesome. Now tell us, how long have you been in the communications industry?
I have been in the communication industry for probably 35 years. I started out in internal comm and human resources, and then eventually I matriculated through graduate school. I gained a PhD, and then I have been teaching for well over 27 years.
Awesome. And why did you decide those career paths were for you?
I felt like it was something that I really wanted to do because I modeled one of my professors who was a consultant. And so I actually kind of followed in her footsteps. So that's why I started in human resources. And then I knew that I didn't want to get pigeonholed into one field. And then that's why I went back to graduate school to expand my knowledge.
And after, during graduate school and your beginning, career, how have things, changed since then? Because I know it's been a while since you've really started studying it. So.
Yes. Oh, it's changed so much over the years. There are so many things. Now we have more of a global society. You can communicate with people from other cultures. We have different time zones. Before, when I just got started, the internet wasn't even a thing. I think I got email, right at the beginning of my graduate school time. So everything has changed. And then just add social media to it, as well as how big the internet has grown. Almost everything has changed about it, except for the core principles.
What would you say are those core principles?
So I would say communication still involves intra communication, and then there's interpersonal communication, and then there's small group, and then mass communication. So when it's just the thoughts that you have with yourself, and then talking between people, because everything is relationship building when it comes to communication, whether you're talking to one person or many people.
What would you say, which group of people are most attracted to those fields?
Well, almost everything, because you can't do anything without communication. So you have to have good communication skills, whether they're oral or written. You have to have a good understanding of nonverbal communication skills, and it just crosses every field. So even if you're in business, if you're in management, if you are in marketing, or you're in public relations and advertising, all of those things involve some form of communication.
Okay, and which one of those sections would you say you excel the most at, and which one do you not like as much?
There's nothing I don't like, because I kind of teach across two big concentrations here at FSC. So I teach on the advertising and public relations side. So it all talks about how can we push things out, or how can we make connections that aren't just us, or how can we be a publicist for someone else, how to write the basic tools for good communications. For instance, a press release or a news release or a newsletter or just basic email, how do you actually do those kinds of things. On the other end, it's all about the relationship between the people. So if you have organizational communication within organizations, there's that study, but there's also looking at how communication is an organizing factor. Two totally different things, but it lends itself to the field. And even if you're in an organization, you have to have good interpersonal skills, so with your team, because now everybody works in a team, with your boss, or with the people that you manage. So the two fields kind of go, hand in hand, because I think you have to have really good interpersonal communication to do anything else.
Yeah, it's really good. And what would you say are also key soft skills on top of those hard skills that would help you excel in this field?
So I think the soft skills, it actually goes back to that, being able to have an executive presence, which means that you walk, talk, look like a leader. You can lead other people, as well as you really, really know who you are and who your audience is.
What would you say are the most hireable traits in this newer generation of students, people from FSC that are about to be graduating into the workforce?
Okay, so this is a quote from one of the leaders at LinkedIn, actually. One of the first things is that, AI is everywhere. So you don't have to worry about AI taking over your job, but the people that know it really, really well. So that's number one. So AI as it relates to communication. The next thing is everyone nowadays is looking for a storyteller. So if you're in sales, if you are in public relations or advertising, if you are in radio and TV, all of these things are really about telling good stories. And so that's the next one. And then the final one is having executive presence, which is, you know, like I said, leadership ability as well as good persuasion skills.
And I know that we were like talking about like, you know, what makes people very hireable. And like, what would you say are like the top mediums to enter into the workforce in? Like, would you say like print media is still a thing that's like poppin', or would you say it's like digital first, you know, or are there any mediums that are valued more or less nowadays?
I don't think there are any that are valued more or less. I think print is not dead, so a lot of people think that it is, but there's a certain, depending on who your audience is, then those are going to be the places where people are going to use certain mediums. So for instance, older people probably use TV and radio more. Everybody younger, you know, baby boomers and below, or below baby boomers, they're probably going to be more digital and, you know, use streaming services and all those kind of things. You just have to know where your audience is so that you can know what's the best way to communicate with them.
Yeah. And talking about audiences, what would you say, like, which audience do brands want to capture the attention of the most lately?
It depends. You know, it depends on what the brands. So each brand has a different audience, and so it could be. So, for instance, my audience might be people that are similar to me. You know, so it might be people that want to learn more, know more about communication, people that want to build their communication skills. Then that would be my audience. But if you're talking about Publix, you know, their audience is everybody that they want to capture as a new customer.
Yeah, that I would say is very true. And like, what would you say you want your audience to walk away with the most?
From my audience?
Yeah.
I want people to, one, really choose themselves, love themselves, really get to know who they are, and then know that they have some kind of meaning in the world.
Yeah, that's deep. And speaking of meaning in the world, what has communications meant to you or people around you?
Communication for me is something that's always evolving. Hopefully, I'm going to be a lifelong learner. I learn from my students as well as I learn because I, you know, have to continuously, you know, keep up and read and those kinds of things. Relationships are really important to me, whether they're at work with my students or whether I, you know, I have a strong family ties too. And so keeping in contact with my family is really important to me, and communicating, you have to actually do that to stay in contact with your family.
Yeah, I agree. And since, you know, I know that you like have gotten a lot of meaning while being in this field, and also like, let's touch on the other field that you're very big in, which is writing.
Okay. Yes, I have co-authored at least 4 textbooks. Well, textbooks are, well, you know, more curriculum type of books. And I just actually finished an intercultural communication textbook with 2 other co-authors. And but in addition to that, I've also written a popular culture self-help book, and it's called The Comeback Roadmap, The Transformational Journey Guide.
That's awesome. Definitely. What would you say are like the highlights that you wanted people to take away from your book, The Comeback Roadmap?
Okay, so totally different audience than the books that I use in higher education. This was more of a, like I said, a self-help book, but I wanted to also help people, you know, go through major life transformations. So at the time when I started doing research for the book, I was only trying to figure out how to make a career comeback, because I spent 11 to 12 years as a stay-at-home mom. So I raised my children, I worked as an adjunct, but primarily mom was my biggest title. But at some point, you know, I knew I wanted to regain my career, so I studied as much as I can, and I researched as many people who made that type of transition. By the time I finished the book, I everything that I felt really proud of, they were checked boxes, marriage check, children check, career check, education check. All of a sudden, some of those boxes became no longer checked. So, my role as a mom was changing. My kids started going off to college. My mom passed away. So then that kind of was a transition of losing a parent, which was a really big deal. I ended up getting divorced during that time. And just by taking the steps in the comeback roadmap, I made a huge transformation. And then now I am where I wanted to be career-wise.
Yeah. And as you said, that you needed to develop all those other parts of your life. And how would you say your work-life balance has been ever since writing the book?
My work-life balance has definitely increased, because I put 3 kids through college, and then I started taking care of my father, who soon will be 89. It's become a lot more busy, but it's really, really fulfilling.
And going back to the textbook that you're writing for intercultural higher education, tell us about that.
So it's more of a handbook, and the idea was from my colleague. She wanted to create a textbook that was accessible, affordable, and kind of like a handbook. So, and we wanted it also to be something that it was visually appealing. So it has lots and lots of pictures, lots of links to videos as well. It's digital, and we just wanted to make it something really, really inviting so that we could hold a seminar-style class where the students can really understand the principles of intercultural communication.
Yeah, that sounds very helpful for students, especially ones at FSC. Mm-hmm. And when are you looking to implement that into your future classes?
So I will start, my colleague has already adopted it at her university, and then I will adopt the book this summer.
Awesome.
In my intercultural class.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And what would you say are tips and tricks for people looking to get into intercultural communications? What would be very valued traits in them?
So do you want to teach intercultural, or do you just want to be able to communicate with people across cultures?
I would say very important, in general, just to be able to communicate with people from other cultures.
Right. So a couple of things. One, study as much as you can about other cultures, because there are so many things that are acceptable here, and we're more individualist in the United States, but some of the things that we value, like competition and other things like strong handshake, direct eye contact. If we went to a more eastern side where they are more collectivist, they care more, it's like all for one, one for all, then you might not, eye contact doesn't have the same, normally you would bow, you wouldn't look someone in the eye. So learning those kind of things. Get to know as many people as you can that are not like you. So try to have diverse friends, diverse relationships, get to know as much, because culture is more than just, when we think of culture, we think about people from another continent. But it's not just that, we have geographic culture, so people in the Northeast are very different than people in the South. Families have their own culture, where the way that they're, whether they, for instance, some students grew up in the South, so they're always yes ma'am, no ma'am, because that's what their parents trained them. So little things like that, just get to know. So it could just be geographic, or it could be different, and religious. Some religious perspectives can have an impact on culture as well.
Yeah, and going to that, what has been a very key moment in your life where you've had to talk to people from a different culture than you?
A lot, especially, I worked at a Fortune 500 company, so there were lots of people that were there from different cultures, and geographically as well. And here on campus, we have an international population. I go to a multicultural church that, and I live in Tampa, Florida, and Tampa is very diverse.
Yeah, it is. Speaking as a resident there
Yes.
myself, yeah, I see a lot of people from different walks of life there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so all very great answers, and I think what we would love to hear leaving off is what would you say to people that are looking to be like influencers or people that, you know, are like really into digital content? Because I know that's a very big part of the communications industry.
I would say find your passion and find your audience
Yeah,
and be you.
that is very direct, but yeah, I love it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this episode of Campus Chat. That has been Dr. Pamela Dyke.
Thank you for having me. This has been an honor.
Yeah, and anything you would like to plug to the audience?
Oh, you can get my book on Amazon. It's The Comeback Roadmap, The Transformational Journey.
Awesome. And I've been your host, Kennedy Owens. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.
Thank you.